So here we have our normal R3D first generation rear sight. You can see it's got that slight incline to help reduce glare. On the R3D 2.0, we've maintained that incline, but we've also added the serrations to there again with the intention of reducing glare in bright light conditions. You should also be able to see the black PVC rings surrounding those tritium lamps. Like I said, we're using a slightly larger, slightly brighter lamp. That PVC ring helps create a more definite edge around the outside edge of that glowing lamp. Here's the normal R3D first generation rear sight. As you can see, it's straight across the bottom. We do have a crush zone to help with installation via sight pusher, but that's really all there was to it. On the new R3D 2.0, here on this side, we've got a noticeable lead-in. The whole goal there is to make it easier to install the sight, regardless of driving it in with a hammer and a punch, or, more preferably, using one of our inline rear sight tools. Here we have an orange R3D 2.0 front sight. It is a slightly better orange than our previous R3D version, and the front sight is coated in black nitride to improve corrosion resistance and durability. Now, let's do an installation on a Glock 17 slide. To speed up everything, we've gone ahead and removed the factory front sight and rear sight from the slide. We're going to start off by removing the screw from the front sight, and we're going to clean everything that we want before we get started. In this case, we're just using Lucas Oil gun cleaner. Any kind of degreaser would work. In a pinch, rubbing alcohol or nail polish remover. Don't let your wife know about that. They tend to get kind of angry, so I've been told, if you start trying to steal their cosmetics. I want to clean off all the engagement surfaces. So the bottom of the sight, this little tenon, get that kind of out of the way here. Okay. I'm using a pointed Q-tip, makes it easier to get down into those threads on the bottom of the front sight. Again, we're just trying to get rid of any oil that would prevent the Loctite from adhering correctly. Right, we're going to use one of our inline rear sight tools to install the rear sight. We always want to add a drop of oil to the threads to make sure that we don't have any galling and increase the longevity of the tool. Because we need to let Loctite set up, I'm going to go ahead and do the front sight first. I'm going to take the red thread locker. Make sure we have a big enough hole in the end of it for the Loctite to come out. I'm going to put a good drop on the threads. And I'm going to add a really good drop kind of anywhere where that front sight blade is going to contact the slide. Simply put the front sight down in that hole. We're going to start the screw. Barely finger tight at the moment because I want to come in, take a look at it. As you can see, the hole in the Glock slide is generous. We want to make sure and get that centered up and perpendicular, or excuse me, parallel to the axis of the bore before we tighten the screw any further. I'm going to come back in and I'm going to tighten it up. Notice, thumb and forefinger only. We don't need a massive amount of torque. We're going to let the Loctite do most of the holding. that point, we're going to set the slide into the pusher, line up the pusher bit, and then lock it into place with the locking wedge. Make sure and give myself plenty of room here. We're going to drop the sight in and get it started into the dovetail. Notice how far that goes in. That's because of that nice lead in we talked about. Let me grab the original R3D just to show you. See how much less it goes in before I see resistance? Generally not a problem. However, if you're using someone else's sight pusher that obscures some of your visual capabilities while installing the sights, you could get yourself into a problem. The nice thing about that lead in is we can get it started with finger pressure quite a bit further and minimize the chance of causing any problems. Start tightening up that bolt. It's about as far as I can go without using the T-handle. So we're going to slide this over to the edge of the table so I can use the T-handle, drop it in, and just start cranking it into place. I'm going to kind of keep an eye on it, visually center it as best as I can from here. Once I think I'm kind of close, I can back that out, break it free of the locking wedge, and I can use that scale laser etched onto the brass pusher bit to see how close I am to centered. Pretty close enough to where I'm just going to leave it so that I can actually zero it to me when I get to the range. And generally we want to let that Loctite sit for 10 to 15 minutes before we clean off the excess. I'm going to go ahead and very, very carefully get rid of it now and be ready to go shoot. Don't forget, we want to get inside where that screw was and get any excess of that of the Loctite out, the thread locker. Had a buddy once that installed a set of sights on a 1911 that had a hole under the dovetail, and he wasn't so careful with the Loctite. It was rather comical watching him attempt to chamber around when he got to the range to shoot. There we have it. We're ready to reassemble and go to the range. And there we have it installed. Now, I know personally I generally need my Glock rear sights biased slightly right, whether that's a trigger press issue or just my eyes being weird. Not really worried. That's what I need. So that's where I would start. I'm going to take that thing to the range, shoot it. Once I'm happy with it, then know that I've got my windage set where it's correct. I'm going to go in and Loctite that rear sight.